Well, 2 years into Russia's war on Ukraine and public opinion regarding the conflict here in Europe does not translate into a message of optimism. In fact, the majority of Europeans are pessimistic about a Ukrainian victory. A survey by the European Council on Foreign Relations says only 1 in 10 think Ukraine can win. 20% believe Russia will win. The Berlin-based think tank says that 41% of respondents want Europe to pressure Ukraine to negotiate with Russia. 17,000 people in 12 European countries took part in this survey. Well, for more now, I want to bring in Rafael Loss from the European Council on Foreign Relations. Rafael, it's good to see you again. You know, 1 year ago, it looked like Ukraine might be able to turn this war around with its counteroffensive. That didn't happen. So I'm wondering, how does this new survey, how does it differ from numbers we may have seen 1 year ago?
My organization, the European Council on Foreign Relations, polled again 12 European countries' populations about their attitudes and views of Russia's full-scale invasion and the war in Ukraine going now into the third year. I think Europeans are not feeling particularly heroic about the war. Neither are they particularly enthusiastic about Ukraine's prospects, but also they doubt Europeans' ability to backfill the U.S. leadership role and military aid to Ukraine in case Donald Trump is reelected to the White House this November.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. Let me start with this notion of war fatigue. You say that this fatigue is crucial to Vladimir Putin's calculations for winning in Ukraine. I'm wondering, how war-weary is Europe, is the West right now?
I think certainly we see a rise in war weariness. Despite inflation in Europe going back to pre-war levels, despite energy prices going back to pre-war levels, European populations feel anxious about Ukraine's prospects, and I think that has an effect on how likely they view a Ukrainian victory and how promising they see continued U.S. and European aid towards Ukraine. They don't think that a Ukrainian victory is particularly likely, but on the other hand, they also don't want to appease Russia and Vladimir Putin. They don't think that peace on Russian terms is any way sustainable.
Yeah, so it seems the message here is, in Europe, we don't want Russia to win, but we think it probably will. Considering that, what should European leaders, what should they do with this knowledge? I mean, how should this new survey, how should it shape policy?
Most Europeans believe that this war will end in some kind of negotiated settlement. And this is certainly true from an analytical perspective. Most wars do end in negotiated settlements. But the fact also is that those negotiated settlements usually reflect the military balance of power on the battlefield. And so in order to sustain European countries' military aid, financial aid to Ukraine, to keep Ukraine in the fight, to avoid a Russian victory in this war, European leaders need to rephrase the support effort, and they have to strengthen the message of peace on international law terms, of avoiding a peace on Russian terms that would equate to a surrender of Ukraine.
Yeah, you say in your survey that leaders need to define the meaning of a durable peace. They say that may be the goal here. What do you mean by that, a durable peace?
A durable peace, in our view, is one that builds on international law and international humanitarian law. The Swiss government, for example, is engaged in an effort to bring together a large coalition of countries supporting Ukraine's peace formula, which recognizes the territorial integrity of the country, which recognizes its political sovereignty, and it calls on the global community to also stand behind international law in order to sustain a future peace agreement and to not give Russia another opening, such as the Minsk 1 and 2 agreements that we saw in 2014, 2015, to manipulate the national politics of Ukraine and to undermine Ukraine's Western trajectory.
What do Europeans think should happen if U.S. support for Ukraine flags? And in the event of Donald Trump, for example, winning another presidency, What do they think should happen?
Europeans seem to doubt that they are able by themselves to backfill what the US is providing in material support to Ukraine, but also in political leadership to bring together this large international coalition of supporters that we've seen emerge, for example, in the context of the Rammstein contact group. But they're also not willing to let Ukraine go. A plurality of Europeans think that they should either maintain or even increase support in case a future U.S. government decides to step out of this international coalition.
And can we see in this new survey, pockets of increased support for Ukraine and pockets where the support is waning, possibly even more pro-Putin, pro-Russia?
European views certainly differ between countries, but they also differ within countries. Sometimes the differences between political parties is larger than those between European countries. But you're right to point out that certainly some countries, governments and populations take a more relatively pro-Russian view, including, for example, Hungary. Greece is also more doubtful than other countries. On the other side, we have Sweden, traditionally also Poland, as a very strong supporter of Ukraine's defensive struggle. But interestingly, some lingering doubt in Eastern European countries about what the large populations of Ukrainian refugees might mean for national cohesion.
Raphael Loss with the European Council on Foreign Relations here in Berlin. Raphael, as always, it's good to have you on. We appreciate you walking us through these new numbers. Thank you.